There is intense national interest in the ACT picking a fight with the Commonwealth, as some see it, over same-sex marriage, passing a same-sex marriage law in Canberra that could lead the way nationally, or perhaps, if it fails in the High Court under a challenge from the Commonwealth, could delay the progress towards same-sex laws. One of those with a vital interest is Senator Louise Pratt, the Labor Senator from Western Australia, who has been a champion of equality for same-sex couples. She joins us every Tuesday, this morning from her home in Perth. Nice to have you on, Senator. Tell us, what are the prospects for this change as it becomes a fight in the High Court?
Well, the prospects for change are good as it passes the ACT Parliament. Clearly, I'm disappointed that the federal government is considering challenging these laws. You know, in a sense, when people mount an argument and say marriage is a federal law, they're right. It's the only way that we'll get marriage equality across the whole of the country is for marriage equality to be done nationally. And it really just, I think, puts a stamp on this issue on behalf of the new federal government that they're opposed to marriage equality. So I'm terribly disappointed about that. And clearly there is a risk, I think, to the legislation in the High Court, but I will remain upbeat and optimistic about its prospects.
Why is there more a risk to this legislation than there would be elsewhere in the country, Senator?
Well, clearly, disappointingly, in 2004, the Howard government moved to amend the Marriage Act to define marriage as between a man and a woman. And the ACT, I think, have put a good model of marriage equality up. From my philosophical point of view, it's nice and inclusive, so therefore it has a pretty broad umbrella of people that are included under the legislation, which means it will be a question for the court the extent to which it overlaps with the federal definition of marriage, if you like.
Right, so it takes the high moral ground in terms of equality for same-sex couples, but therefore carries a greater risk of legal failure?
Look, I'm not a High Court lawyer, and I want to leave it to the courts, if you like. And really, I don't think it should be before the High Court. There's no need for the federal government to intervene on this issue. They shouldn't. They should be leaving the ACT to do its own governing. And really, I think it's a terrible reflection on the Abbott government's approach to marriage equality.
What are the risks, or what are the stakes here? If the law succeeds in the High Court for the ACT, does that increase progress and the timeline, do you think, towards national same-sex marriage legitimacy? Or if it fails, might it greatly delay the progress?
Oh, look, I think this is a terrific step forward. I don't see it as delaying the process either way. I think what it does is is a constant reminder to the Australian community and indeed to the federal government that people want marriage equality in this country. So I'm not concerned about any so-called step backwards. I think today's reform of marriage equality, when it passes the ACT Parliament, is a terrific step forward.
What's your read on the federal government on this? Do you see them now as really obstinate in this regard? Because Tony Abbott's messages on how he might handle it have been mixed, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and really quite duplicitous. You know, before the election, they said they would have a meeting about this issue after the election. Well, you know, we're after the election. There's still the prospect of a conscience vote to come forward when the Parliament next tackles this issue. But already you can see the Abbott government seeking to put their stamp on this issue, and seeking to put their stamp on this issue in a way that opposes equality for same-sex couples. It's terribly disappointing.
When you say you can see this, how do you see it? What evidence is there that they are anti some move in the near future?
Well, they're already talking about taking this issue to the High Court and being a party to opposing it, arguing that, you know, the right to legislate in this area is the purview of the federal government. Well, you know, of the federal parliament. Well, if it is the purview of the federal parliament, then let's get on and legislate for marriage equality in this country. Congratulations on your role as a parliamentary secretary in the area of climate change.
Tell us, what do you make of Greg Hunt, the Environment Minister, saying yesterday that a lot of the heavy lifting on moving from a carbon tax to the direct action scheme the Coalition promotes could be done by regulation, not in fact by legislation?
Well, in fact, Greg Hunt's announcement that that's the case really underlines the fundamental flaws in the Abbott Government's approach to climate change, which is that there is no legislated cap on pollution. There is no way of actually being able to hold the Australian community, the Australian economy to account for our emissions, to manage those emissions if you simply regulate. I think there will be massive problems with Greg Hunt's approach to this policy, precisely because we need transparency and enforceability when it comes to being able to put a cap on carbon pollution. And I think it exposes a fundamental weakness in the Coalition's approach to this policy. Do you now accept that the change away from a carbon price to the direct action scheme is an inevitability given Senate numbers next year, from July 1 next year? Well, the Labor Party is most interested in making sure that we retain a cap on pollution. And so we need to work through all of the issues before the Parliament in a principled way. A cap on pollution is not something that Greg Hunt has put before us properly at the moment. And, we will be fighting to defend Labor's positive legacy in terms of making sure that our country can take real and meaningful action on climate change.
Senator Louise Pratt, thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, that's a delight to be with you. Thank you.